Hey everyone, today I want to share a story that might touch your heart and maybe even change the way you see things in life. Let's dive into the incredible journey of Areno, a guy who faced two near-death situations and had a spiritual insight about the future that we all should hear. Before we get rolling, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching this from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any of our cool stories. Let's embark on this adventure together. My name is Areno, and I never thought I'd be here sharing this story, but life has its own way of surprising us, right? I was born and grew up in Colombia, a vibrant place full of life and friendly faces. From a young age, I learned how important hard work is from my parents. They showed me that with dedication and a bit of faith, we can get through anything. I've always been a down-to-earth guy. I worked with my hands, creating beautiful crafts that people loved to buy to decorate their homes. I married my soulmate, Juan, and we were blessed with two amazing kids, Mato and Lucia. Our life was calm, maybe even a bit ordinary, but we found happiness in the little things and tackled everyday challenges together. Everything took a turn one hot afternoon in July 1995. It was just a regular day, sticky and warm, like most summer days in Colombia. I was home alone, focused on finishing up some craft orders. Juan had taken the kids out, so I was enjoying the peace to get my work done. I still remember that moment so vividly. I was putting away Juan's tools, which she always seemed to leave scattered around. I'll admit, it bugged me a bit. Out of nowhere, I felt something unusual, a presence that was just odd. When I glanced towards the kitchen door, I saw a figure that left me speechless. It was a man, but not like anyone I had ever seen. He wore a white robe, had a golden belt around his waist, and curly hair that cascaded to his shoulders. His face radiated peace, almost glowing. For a brief moment, I didn't feel scared. It was like this presence was perfectly normal, even though it was completely unexpected. Before I could even speak, he vanished. Just like that, he was gone, as if he had never been there at all. I was left in shock, trying to make sense of what just unfolded. Was I losing my mind? Had the heat gotten to me? I double-checked all the doors and windows, but everything was locked tight. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I had this weird feeling like someone was watching me. My heart was racing, and the place that was always my safe spot now seemed off, almost creepy. I tried to distract myself by binge-watching some shows, but I just couldn't focus on anything. Then out of nowhere, this super bright light appeared by the window, brighter than anything I had ever seen. That's when I heard it, a soft yet clear female voice saying, "I'm coming to get you." At that moment, it felt like my entire world flipped upside down. I had no clue what was going on, but one thing was certain: my life would never be the same after that day. I was completely paralyzed with fear. But what happened next was even more terrifying. Suddenly, it felt like I was floating. I looked down and saw my own body chilling on the couch. It was like my spirit had separated from my body. I panicked at first, trying to grab onto anything, but my hands, if I could even call them hands, were just passing through everything. It felt like I was a ghost in my own home. I yelled out for my kids, but nobody could hear me. Desperate to get back to my body, I floated around the house, drifting through rooms I was so familiar with, but everything felt strange and almost unreal. The walls seemed to pulse with some odd energy, and I saw colors I had never known existed. That bright light from before got even brighter, pulling me in like it was inviting me. Part of me wanted to go towards it. It felt so peaceful, like a warm hug I had never experienced. But another part of me fought back. I thought about my family and everything I'd leave behind if I went. I concentrated hard on my body, trying to feel every part of it, but there was this invisible wall that just wouldn't let me return. The more I fought, the harder it felt. Then I remembered a little prayer my mom taught me when I was a kid. I started saying it, not with my mouth since I didn't have one anymore, but with all my being. Those words seemed to create a protective bubble around me. As I prayed, I felt something change. It was like this force was pulling me back. The sensation was bizarre, like being squeezed through a tiny tube. I felt intense heat followed by a biting chill. My body felt incredibly heavy. With one last push, I felt my spirit get sucked back into my body. I opened my eyes, and there I was, back on the couch. My body felt cold and I was drenched in sweat, shaking like crazy, and my heart was racing so hard I thought it would burst. I lay there for what felt like forever, too scared to move, scared that if I shut my eyes, that light would come back to take me. When Juan showed up with the kids, I couldn't tell him what had happened. How could I explain something I didn't even understand? That night dragged on. It was the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, replaying every second of that weird experience over and over in my mind. I knew something way beyond what I could grasp had taken place, and deep down, I sensed this was just the start. After that terrifying experience in 1987, life carried on. I tried to push past it, telling myself maybe it was just a really vivid dream or some sort of heat-induced hallucination, but deep down, I knew it was real. That experience changed me in ways I couldn't put into words. As the years went by, things in Venezuela got tougher. The country's economic and political issues worsened. Juan and I started worrying about our children's futures. That's when we got the chance to move to Austin, Texas. It wasn't an easy choice, leaving behind everything we knew, our family, friends, and culture, but we knew it was the best choice for our family. In 2000, we packed up our things and started a new journey. Austin was a whole different scene from Venezuela. The pace was quicker, and the city was way bigger and busier than what we were used to. At first, the culture shock hit hard. We had to learn a new language, adjust to different customs, and find new jobs. I kept working on my crafts, but I also took a job at a hardware store to help make ends meet. Juan found work as an office assistant. The kids adjusted faster than us, as kids usually do. Before long, they were speaking better English than we were and making new friends at school. Years went by, and bit by bit, we started to feel at home in Austin. We built a new life, made new friendships, and got involved in the community. Still, even with all this change, I never forgot that day in Venezuela. Occasionally, especially when it was quiet at night, I'd find myself thinking about that experience, about the figure I saw, and the feeling of being outside my body. Sometimes I'd look up at the sky in Austin, so different from the sky back home, and I'd wonder if that light would ever show up again. Part of me was scared of it, but another part, I had this feeling, almost like I knew there was something out there, something beyond the everyday life we lived. Years went by, and I got older while the kids grew up, finished school, and started their own lives. Juan and I aged together, thankful for what we built, but there was always this sense that there was more out there. Then in 2011, everything shifted again. I was 63 at that time, thinking I had experienced pretty much everything life could throw at me. Little did I know the universe had other surprises in store. It was November 12th, 2011, and I remember it clearly. It was a Saturday. I had spent the whole day at the hardware store and was wiped out by the time I got home. Juan noticed I was tired and suggested I hit the hay early. I got into bed, just like I always did, lying face down, and I fell asleep almost right away. At first, it was just a deep, dreamless sleep, but then everything changed. Suddenly, I found myself in a place I didn't recognize. It felt like I was floating over a ruined landscape. The sky was dark, filled with thick gray clouds, and the air had a strange scent, a mix of smoke and something I couldn't quite place. All around me was destruction, torn buildings, empty streets, and abandoned cars. It looked like a war zone, but not just any war. I saw bizarre weapons that I've never seen before, shooting out lights and sounds that felt from another planet. The most terrifying part was the people. There were bodies everywhere, both adults and kids. Those who were still alive looked frantic, running around, crying for help. I could see whole families trying to shield themselves, hiding in what was left of buildings. The water in the rivers was dark, dirty, and the plants and trees were all wilted or dead. It was like all life had been drained from that place. As I watched, a heavy sadness washed over me. I could almost feel their pain. I wanted to help, to do something, but I was just a bystander in this nightmare. Then, as quickly as it started, everything changed again. I found myself back in my bedroom, looking at my own body, asleep on the bed. It was similar to my first experience in 1987, but this time I wasn't scared. I felt this urgent need to see more, to understand more. Before I even thought about it, I let myself drift out of the room. I strolled through the hallways like they were just air. I spotted Juan napping comfortably on the couch, the book she'd been reading still resting on her lap. Part of me wanted to shake her awake and tell her what was going on, but I knew better. I moved on, stepping outside and drifting through the neighborhood. Everything felt normal, calm. Nothing hinted at the chaos I had just witnessed. Yet, deep down, I knew what I saw was real, or at least could be real one day. That's when I sensed something, a presence bigger than me, bigger than anything I had ever felt before. I was sure I was in the presence of God. Floating above my Chicago neighborhood, I felt an energy so strong it nearly overwhelmed me. It wasn't something I could see, it was more of a feeling that wrapped around me completely. It was like the entire universe had gathered into a single moment, and there I was, caught up in it. I didn't hear words in the usual way. It was like thoughts just popped into my head, crisp and clear. I realized I was standing in front of the creator of everything. The experience was more than overwhelming. It was pure love, strength, and wisdom blended into something I never thought I could handle. In that moment, all my questions about life, my purpose, and the concept of good and evil made sense. I felt like I could see the entirety of the universe unfolding in front of me, the way every little choice and action we make ties into a grand and beautiful design. But alongside this clarity came a heavy realization. I could see that there was still so much for me to do here on Earth. The chaos I had just experienced wasn't some random nightmare. It was a warning, a glimpse of what could happen if humanity didn't change course. An intense urge filled me to go back and do something to change that bleak future. I pleaded with God to let me return and give me a chance to make a difference. The reply wasn't in words, but in feelings and insights that washed over me. I understood that my mission wasn't to dodge that future, but to prepare others for what lay ahead. The conflict I had witnessed wasn't just a physical battle. It was deeply spiritual, and the fight would unfold in the hearts and minds of everyone involved. I felt a huge weight on my shoulders. How could I, a regular craftsman from Seattle, make any difference? But then I felt this comforting presence reminding me that everyone has a part to play, no matter how small. Suddenly, I felt this strong pull, like invisible strings were dragging me back into my body. I wanted to stay longer in that beautiful light, but I knew I had to return. The journey back was intense. It felt like I was passing through layers of reality, seeing flashes of different places and times, things I couldn't quite grasp. And then with a jolt that shook me to my core, I was back in my body. Opening my eyes felt like surfacing from a deep dive. My body felt heavy, almost painful, like I had just run a marathon. I was drenched in cold sweat, and my heart was racing so loudly I could hear it. But the weirdest part was this sensation in my arms and chest, as if something was moving inside me, a strange energy flowing through my veins. I could feel something rising up my left arm, across my chest, and out my right arm. At first I thought it was just a leftover feeling from my experience, but it didn't fade away. It felt like something had been lodged inside me, something I couldn't see or touch, but could definitely feel. I tried to get up, but my body wasn't cooperating. My movements were slow and awkward. Juan must have sensed my distress because she rushed into the room, worry etched on her face. "Arn, what's wrong? Are you okay?" she asked, coming to my side. I wanted to tell her everything that had happened, but the words just wouldn't come out. My mind felt like it was racing ahead while my body lagged behind. I could only stare at her, my eyes probably wide with fear and confusion. Without hesitating, Juan picked up her phone and called 911. I could hear her voice trembling as she explained my condition to the operator. I desperately wanted to tell her I was fine, that she didn't need to panic, but my body just wouldn't listen. The minutes dragged on like an eternity. Juan stayed by my side, holding my hand and whispering comforting words. I could see the fear in her eyes, and I felt so guilty for worrying her so much. When the paramedics finally arrived, a new wave of panic hit me. What if they took me away, and I had to go through another experience? What if I didn't come back again? This time was different, but I didn't have a choice. My body just wasn't cooperating, and I knew I needed to see a doctor. The paramedics arrived quickly and started checking me out. I overheard one of them mention my body temperature was way too low and that my muscles felt stiff. They placed me on a stretcher and wheeled me into the ambulance, with Juan right there close by as the sirens wailed and we sped through the streets of Orlando. I felt caught in two worlds. Part of me was back in that incredible experience, trying to understand all the amazing things I'd seen and felt. The other part was in that ambulance, anxious about what the doctors might discover. All the while, that strange feeling lingered, like something was shifting inside me, an energy I couldn't quite grasp. I knew my life had taken a turn for the worse, but I had no idea what was in store. The ride to the hospital felt surreal. The paramedics were checking my vitals and asking me questions I could barely respond to. It was like I was watching everything from above, floating on that stretcher. I could see myself lying there, pale and still, while Juan held my hand, tears silently streaming down his cheeks. I wanted to reassure him, to let him know everything would be all right, but I couldn't. Instead, I felt myself being pulled away, soaring toward a stunning city that shone like it was made of pure light. As I neared this beautiful place, an indescribable peace and joy washed over me, as if all the stress and fears from life back home had vanished. But just as I was about to step into the city, something weird happened. Large walls of coral appeared out of nowhere, blocking my way. I was puzzled. Why couldn't I enter? Then I heard that strong voice again, the same one I had encountered during my experience with something divine. It called my name and told me to return. The voice was firm yet kind, reminding me I still had things to accomplish back home. With a heavy heart, I felt my spirit being drawn back. Before I opened my eyes, I had one last vision, a massive, radiant figure holding the moon in one hand and the earth in the other. It was a powerful image that highlighted how everything is connected between the physical and spiritual worlds. When I finally blinked my eyes open, I found myself in an emergency room, surrounded by doctors and nurses. They looked relieved to see me awake, but I could sense their confusion. My vitals must have been all over the place as they kept checking and rechecking the monitors. The strangest part was that despite all the chaos, even with all the chaos around me, I felt oddly calm, like a part of me was still in a safe, serene place away from everything happening. Juan was right there beside me, holding my hand. When our eyes locked, I saw a blend of relief and worry in his gaze. I wanted to share everything I had just gone through, but I knew it wasn't the right moment. How could we put something so deep and life-changing into words with all the medical craziness going on? The doctors ran a bunch of tests, drew blood, and did CT scans. I answered their questions like a robot, but my mind was somewhere else, replaying the visions I had and trying to figure out what they meant. That weird sensation in my arms and chest lingered, almost like there was something inside me that I couldn't see or touch, but I could feel it clearly. I tried to bring this up with the doctors, but they were more focused on my vital signs than on how I actually felt. I spent the night in the hospital for observation, and Juan stayed by my side the whole time, crammed into a chair that looked beyond uncomfortable. I went back and forth between moments of sharp awareness where I could notice every detail of the room, and other times where I felt completely disconnected, like I was floating again. During those quiet morning hours, while the hospital was still and Juan dozed off, I pondered everything that had happened. I realized my life had changed forever. The visions, the touch of something divine, the sense that I was chosen for a purpose, it all weighed on me. But with that weight came a strong feeling that I had been touched by something much bigger than myself, something beyond what we can comprehend. Now, for better or worse, I had a reason to be here. I didn't exactly know what that reason was or how I would fulfill it, but I understood that my journey was just getting started. After a long night in the hospital, the doctors finally let me go home. They couldn't find anything physically wrong with me, which seemed to confuse them more than anything. They mentioned stress and exhaustion, but I knew what had happened to me was way beyond that. The first few days back home felt odd. Juan and the kids treated me like I was fragile, constantly checking in if I needed anything or if I was okay. I appreciated their concern, but at the same time, I felt a little detached, as if there was an invisible barrier between me and the world around me. That strange feeling still hung in the air. In my chest and arms felt weird. Sometimes it was just a little tingling. Other times it felt like something was shifting inside. I tried to talk to Juan about it, but I could see the worry in his eyes grow. I figured it was better to keep it to myself, at least for now. The toughest part was dealing with all those memories and visions from my experience. They came in quick bursts, often when I least expected them. I could be washing the dishes one minute and suddenly find myself back in that amazing place. Or Juan could be watching TV and catch a glimpse of that broken future he had seen. I started having issues sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I was scared of having another out-of-body experience. Part of me wanted to go back, to feel that divine presence again, but another part was scared I wouldn't come back if I tried. I attempted to return to my job at the hardware store, but it was hard to focus. Customers and coworkers seemed so caught up in little things that didn't matter. How could I explain to them that none of this was important after what I'd seen? I started looking into near-death experiences. I read books, scoured articles online, and watched documentaries. I found out plenty of people had gone through similar things. Some talked about tunnels of light, others about seeing loved ones who passed away. But nobody seemed to have the same experience I did. One night, about a week after it all happened, I decided to tell Juan everything. We waited for the kids to go to bed and sat together in the living room. I started from the beginning, talking about the first experience back in 1987 that I'd never shared before, and then everything that had happened recently. Juan listened quietly, his eyes wide at times and misty at others. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he surprised me by taking my hand and saying, "I believe in you, Areno." Those words felt like a relief for my soul, knowing Juan believed me and didn't think I was losing it. He asked me what I thought I should do next, and I had to admit I didn't know. "I feel like I was meant for something," I explained, "but I don't know what exactly. How can I prepare people for something spiritual? How can I warn them about a future I don't fully grasp?" He thought for a moment and suggested something that stuck with me. "Maybe you don't need to do anything massive. Maybe it was all about living differently and being an example to others." That thought hit me out of nowhere. Maybe Juan was onto something. Maybe my purpose wasn't to preach or try to convert anyone. Maybe it was just about living with more awareness, compassion, and a deeper connection to the divine. That night, for the first time since everything happened, I managed to sleep well. I woke up the next morning feeling refreshed and with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt before. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I felt like I was headed in the right direction. In the weeks and months that followed, I started noticing some subtle yet significant changes in myself and in how I saw the world. It felt like my senses were turned up a notch, not just my physical senses, but my spiritual ones too. Colors looked brighter, and music felt richer and more layered. I began to pick up on the energy of the people around me, almost as if I could see their auras. It could be overwhelming sometimes, especially in busy places, so I started to value moments of quiet and solitude more. My connection to nature transformed as well. I began rising early just to catch the sunrise. Each beam of light felt like a gift, a reminder of the beauty and wonder of creation. I started taking long walks by the lake, feeling the connection between the rhythm of the water and the pulse of the universe. The strange sensations in my arms and chest persisted, but with time, I learned to accept them as part of me. Sometimes, they were even comforting, a constant reminder of what I had been through and the mission I felt I was on. At work, I noticed more people started coming to me, not just for advice on building materials, but also to share their struggles. It was as if they sensed I had some insights to offer. I didn't talk openly about my experience, but I made it a point to listen and provide words of support when I could. My bond with Juan and the kids deepened too. I began to treasure every moment with them in a new way. The little squabbles and annoyances of daily life felt trivial now, so I focused on creating memories and being fully present when we were together. One of the biggest shifts was in my spirituality. I had always considered myself a man of faith, but in a more traditional and somewhat distant way. Now I felt a direct connection with the divine. My prayers transformed from simple requests into meaningful conversations. I started meditating regularly, something I had never tried before. At first, it was tough to calm my mind, but over time, I found I could enter some pretty intense states of awareness, similar to the feeling I had during my near-death experience. In those moments, I sometimes caught glimpses of the future or deep insights about life. I also began to have more vivid and meaningful dreams, waking up with the sense that I'd received important messages while I slept. I started a dream journal to help me figure out what these dreams meant and how they connected to my purpose. One night, I had a particularly strong dream. I was standing on a hill, looking down at a crowd of people in a valley, all staring up at me, waiting for me to say something. When I finally opened my mouth, a bright beam of light shot out, reaching everyone in the valley. As the light touched them, I saw their faces change from fear and confusion to calm and understanding. When I woke up, I had a clear realization. My mission wasn't just to stop the spiritual battles I had imagined, but to help people get ready for them. Not by spreading fear or dark prophecies, but by sharing love, compassion, and understanding. I began to look for ways to share this message subtly in my everyday conversations. When someone was having a tough time, instead of giving practical advice, I'd encourage them to look within and find their own strength. My friend Juan noticed these changes in me, and although he seemed a bit worried at times, she supported me wholeheartedly. One night, while we sat on the porch watching the stars, she turned to me and said, "You look different, Areno, but in a good way. It's like you've discovered your true self." Her words struck a chord with me. I realized I had indeed changed. The near-death experience wasn't just a one-time thing, it was the kickoff of a continuous transformation. Each day brought new insights and realizations. Sometimes I found myself thinking back to that scary vision I had of the future, but instead of letting fear take over, I used it as motivation to spread more light and love in the world. I believed that if everyone could awaken to their true spiritual selves, we could really shift the future for the better. And so, day after day, I kept on this journey. One day I found myself on a journey, not as a guru or a guide, but as a regular guy who had caught a glimpse of something special. My goal was pretty straightforward but meaningful: to live every day with mindfulness, kindness, and thankfulness, and to inspire others to do the same. It's been a few years since that pivotal night in 2018 when my life took a huge turn. Looking back, I can see how each moment and experience led me here. The way wasn't always smooth, but it was full of rewards. Now at 75, I feel like I finally get the meaning behind that near-death experience. It wasn't about seeing the future or dodging disaster. It was about awakening, not just myself, but everyone around me, to a deeper reality and a stronger connection with the universe and each other. That odd sensation in my arms and chest never really went away, but over time, I learned to view it not as a burden, but as a constant reminder of my link to something bigger. Whenever I feel lost or down, that feeling brings me back to what truly matters. My relationship with Juan has blossomed in ways I didn't think were possible. She's not just my wife, she's my partner in this journey and my rock in this hectic world. Now our kids are grown and have families of their own. Sometimes they look at me with both awe and concern. I know they don't always get the path I've taken, but I feel their constant love and support. Over the years, many people have sought me out, sensing that I had something worthwhile to share. I've never claimed to be a teacher or a spiritual guide. I just shared my journey and the lessons that came with it. Sometimes that meant being there for someone in crisis, and other times it was just offering a warm smile or a few kind words to a stranger in town. The idea of the spiritual battle has always lingered in my mind, but my view of it has changed. I've come to understand that this struggle isn't something that's waiting in the future. It's happening right now, in every single moment and choice we make. It's a conflict between fear and love, division and unity, and in this struggle, each of us plays a part. We don't need fancy weapons or detailed plans. The most powerful tool we have is love. Love for ourselves, for others, and for the world we inhabit. Every act of kindness matters. Kindness, every moment of understanding, and every little bit of gratitude is a win in this ongoing journey. As I look to the future, I can't say for sure what's in store. The images I saw during my near-death experience were more symbolic than literal, and I get that now. But I do know that no matter what comes our way, we're ready to tackle it if we keep our hearts open and our minds connected to something greater. My journey isn't finished yet. Each day brings fresh discoveries, new challenges, and chances to grow and learn. Sometimes I find myself thinking about that amazing place I caught a glimpse of, that feeling of complete peace and joy. I realize I'll return one day, but for now, I'm thankful for every moment I have here, every chance I get to make a difference, no matter how small. For those reading or listening to my story, I want to share a message. Don't wait for a near-death experience to wake up to what life truly is. The magic, the miracles, the divine. It's all around us, in every breath and every heartbeat. Be open to it. Let yourself feel the connection to everything, and most importantly, love. Love deeply, unconditionally, and fiercely, because in the end, it is love that will carry us through. My name is Areno, and this is my story. A story of life and rebirth, of fear and bravery, of doubt and faith, but mostly, it's a love story. A bond that goes beyond life and death, connecting us all to something greater and to one another. And it's with this love that I'll continue my journey, grateful for every step along the way.